Um, I wanted to do this review for a few weeks now, but other things came up, as you obviously know. This is American Wife by Taya Kyle. This is the so-called third book in the Kyle trilogy in order of publication. The first version of American Sniper was published. This is not the first version. This is the second version, updated version with an afterword that goes after his murder. Okay, so the first version of American Sniper was published. Then American Gun, which I also previously reviewed, was published, and Chris Kyle was writing the last chapter when he died, and a friend of his had to finish it for him. And there's a couple of afterwords and a few remarks about his life in here. Now, I read these in a little bit of reverse order. I read this one first. Then I read this one, which is the updated version after his death that I just mentioned. Then I read this one. This is entirely from Taya's point of view. So there are a couple of incidents where you'll have, while he is overseas, she's at home, but you get her version. When his version, he's like, I shot the guy and he died, or I got written up for this, or this happened there, and I call my wife. In this version, you get, it's kind of like reading the same story again, only you're getting it from a different perspective. And obviously, the halfway point, we know what happens. So, the end of the book is about his services, and it's about her trying to move on. And I did speak to Taya on Twitter a couple times. There was an issue with this. This was supposed to be autographed by her, but for some, not holding it against her, for some strange reason, something happened, and she didn't autograph it. They didn't put it in front of her, but she didn't autograph it. So I've been trying to get a hold of her to see if she can do it for me. But I haven't heard back from her. I understand. She has more important things to do than entertain me. But in theory, if I ever do get a chance to talk to her again, I would like her to sign this. And I told her, I said, listen, I'll mail it to an office, I'll mail it to a P.O. box, I don't want your real address, just like Mociano. Obviously, I'll pay the expenses. I'm not going to make her pay for it. They also talk about a couple other bad things in here, like Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura 1. The insurance company paid for some of the settlement, but not all of it. So this is basically her struggle to move on past his death. So it's not exactly a fun book to read. There was no happy ending where they ride off into the sunset and make Galley doing the movies. So if you're looking for a romance novel with a happy ending, you're gonna have to read something else. But I want to support her because she's a single mother now. She's not gonna remarry. I actually told her, she didn't get back to me on it, but I told her Lena Basilone, John Basilone's wife, was the same way. When her husband died, she got the notice on her. Lena Basilone was 4 years older than her husband. Her husband was killed at Iwo Jima. When she got the notice, it was on her 32nd birthday. And to the day she was buried, she never kissed a man on the cheek. Okay? She will not touch a man. She will not look at a man. Nothing. She said, once you've had the best, you don't want the rest. I imagine Taylor is the same way. Now, there was a mix-up to explain what happened here. I'm going to give a little spoiler alert. His mother, and I mean his mother, worked at the kids' school, Angel and Bubba. And when Chris came by the school one day, for whatever reason he was there, she pulled Chris aside and said, can you help my son? My son is a Marine, he's got problems, can you help him? But what we found out later was, what she did not mention to Chris, was that her son had been involved in an incident involving a knife. Her son had been in a nut house. And I mean no disrespect to Taya when I say this. I'm so very, very sorry. I am going to share this video with her. I mean absolutely no disrespect to her at all when I say this. But the problem was her husband did not know until the last minute. By then it was too late, obviously, who this individual was. Now, obviously, most veterans are not like that. But for the 1 out of 100,000 that are, there's going to be a problem there. And, you know, it's a horrible thing. You should be careful when you go out with someone, especially that outing is going to be involving guns and being alone in the middle of nowhere. You should be careful what that person is like inside all the way. I guarantee you that if she had told Chris exactly what was going on in his brain and exactly what he was capable of, I guarantee you Chris would have said, okay, give me the hog ties and I'll bring them to Nut House for you. But I guarantee you Chris Kyle would not have brought someone that psychotic to a gun range in the middle of nowhere and be like, here you go, here's a loaded gun, I'll turn my back now. So, and the kids had to leave that school, go to a new school because Taya couldn't stand them being in the same building as his mother. Now, full disclosure, it's not easy to be related to a murderer, and I'm telling you that from experience. It's not, when someone commits a murder, there are victims on both sides. But, truth be told, if you're allowing your relative to be with someone, especially if they're going to be alone in the middle of nowhere with guns, and I'm a member of 3 gun rights organizations saying this, you need to think twice about who you're leaving alone with your relative. Okay? If you know your son is psychotic, don't ask anyone in the world, especially a father with 2 kids at home, do me a favor, can you take my son out in the middle of nowhere, please, and be alone for a few hours? Okay? So that's the reason why Taya is uncomfortable being around the mother and uncomfortable with the kids around the mother. That's why the kids left school. And for that, I don't blame her. Because if your uncle shot my cousin dead, I wouldn't hold it against you. But if you knew your uncle was a psychopath and you encouraged my cousin to hang out with your uncle, yeah, I would definitely have a problem with that. So this is the last book in the Kyle trilogy, if you want to call it that. Will anyone make any others? I don't think so, but it was, for what it was a very, very good book. Obviously, I got choked up a couple times reading it. I'm not going to lie, I don't want to sound like a little girl when I say that, but I've cried reading a couple of books a couple of times. Because, let's face it, no one deserved what Chris Kyle deserves. I would not do to my worst enemy what happened to Chris Kyle. No one deserves that. Once again, Mark Luttrell makes an appearance. Mark Luttrell has appeared in this book and this book. He and Chris were very good friends. They were both in Ramada together. I don't know if it was the same time you guys Marcus down, but they were both in Ramada together. They were both in Ramada. They were obviously members of the SEAL community. So it is a very good book for what it's worth. You should go out and buy it if you want to read about his life, her life especially. But it's not a fun book. You're not going to giggle reading it. Okay? It's not fun, but it is a necessary book. Her family doesn't need help. They do need money. They obviously have income from book rights from her. She does work. She's not a she does work. But you know how expensive college can be. You know how expensive 2 kids can be. You know how hard it is if you're a single parent, especially under these circumstances. So I try to give her some of my money if I can. I try to help her out when I can. Yeah. I like reading about her husband. I like reading his husband's work. This was tremendous. This is my favorite. Out of the 3 books, this is my favorite. This is a history book. So this is my absolute favorite. And I told Tay this is my favorite of the books. So this is my favorite of the books. This one is my least favorite, not because I don't like the writing, but because of the ending. That's why I have to say it's my least favorite. She goes into very, very good detail about how hard her life is after the murder of her husband. And you walk away with a little more respect for her. Okay, her husband came from a society where 95% of married men get divorced. And she stayed married to her husband. She didn't divorce him. Okay, she didn't take the kids and run away somewhere, which some wives have done. Unfortunately, that's the case. She did stick by him, so that alone makes her a good woman. And it is what it is. She does share a few more personal things than I would share. She's very, very personal. She's holding back. She tells you what it is. She tells you how the struggle is. She gets a little intimate sometimes. And well, that's how she wants to write, and that's her life. So, and I imagine a lot of other widows, whether their husband was killed in action or whether their husband was killed for some other stupid reason, I imagine they would be able to get some support from reading her books. They would be able to relate to her a little bit. Okay, thank you.